All right, guys, this is going to be so much fun. Today, we are talking with Lexi Peck. Even as a young girl, Lexi was known far and wide as the baby whisperer. That's because she's always had an incredible gift for calming babies and connecting with kiddos. Now, she took that passion and natural gifting and got her degree in psychology and focused in childhood development. And now her heart is to create easy, straightforward ways. It's easier said than done. Straightforward ways for parents to navigate the complexities of raising kids. She's doing this in a number of ways. And one of the most recent, and I'd say the most powerful, is her new children's book called What Do You Say to a Dragon? I got to tell you, it's a refreshing take on what to do when your kiddos, and frankly, when you are facing fear and anxiety. And you know, I think it's one of those that wildly important subjects as parents, but as people. And it's always good to have some tools in the toolbox for overcoming worry, dealing with anxiousness, that temptation to freak out when a dragon, real or imagine, walks in the room. So I'm excited about this conversation. By the way, Lexi is not just handing out this advice without having to apply these strategies herself on a daily basis. That's because she and her husband, Josh, have two amazing kiddos, Vivian and Xander. And speaking of kiddos, Lexi is also the daughter of my friend and former Dream Think Do guest, William Paul Young. Paul is the successful author you probably know, who has written many books, including The Shack and Crossroads. In fact, Paul pointed me to Lexi's book, and I was instantly hooked and wanted to have her come on immediately. That's why I'm so excited about this conversation. So let's get to this. Lexi, welcome to Dream Think Do.
So happy to be here.
I love it. This is going to be fun. So I'm glad this thing is going to be 4 hours long because I have so many questions I want to ask you. But I know you've got a real passion for kiddos and a real passion for parents. And with your background, with your experience, you could have started this whole thing by writing a 400-page book on parenting or parenting strategies. Why start with a kid's book?
So one thing that I've learned out of everything, we have so much information.
Yeah,
There's information everywhere. You can look it up. You can pull it from people you know, from people you don't know, from people you don't want, people you want. It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
One of the things that me and my husband have realized is the way that you get people to understand what it is you're trying to say is by living it out and showing a different perspective instead of telling them a different perspective. Because when you have so much information, it's hard to actually imagine something different than what you're doing.
Yep.
And so with our life, we have decided to do some pretty radical things for ourselves and our kids, which is moving to a farm and having 23 acres where neither of us were farmers. We were living in a 1,000-square-foot home in a city, like.
And you're not just kind of farming, you're really farming. Go ahead and list out, all the different types of activities that you guys are doing as a family here.
Yeah. So we currently have 8 cows. We have about 200 meat chickens that we are processing the first half soon, and then the second half in about 8 weeks.
Goodness. Wow.
And we have 4 goats and a couple cats. One's pregnant, about to have some babies. We have a dog, and then obviously my 2 kids, and I'm pregnant with my 3rd.
Right. There's a lot happening in your world, for crying out loud.
Absolutely.
I love it. Yeah.
Yes. So the thing that this book does for me, and it started out as a poem for myself and for adults, but the way that it transcribed into a children's book was creating a scenario that you can actually imagine.
Yeah.
Instead of having to say, well, if I'm in this particular situation at this particular time, then this would apply.
Yeah.
But if I'm not, how do I apply it?
Yeah.
And so that's what I feel like my book does, is kind of brings the experiential into a simple format that you can extend to yourself, to your kids, to a lot of different areas easily.
I so agree. And I think it's one of those things where, you know how the brain works. It's wild because, we can be introduced to a powerful strategy, but often it's the story that creates the mental folder for that to actually stick, right? Like, so if there's a story that goes along with it, you're saying, oh, I could see that. I could see myself in that story. I can understand that story. You're going to be so much more able to understand the power of the strategy, be able to remember it, and then apply it. So I think in many ways, being able to do that in a children's book in 26 pages, it might sound easier to do, but I think it's sometimes going simple is actually more difficult to do. So I love
Yes.
that you were able to boil this down. So the book is called What Do You Say to a Dragon? And you and I talked before we hit record. Like, I never want to blow somebody, like spoiler and blow the whole plot of the book. But I think in so many ways, the story of this is powerful, and the strategy is even more so. So walk us through a little bit of the story and the strategy of what to say to your dragon.
Yeah. So my daughter was having nightmares, and my instinct as a mother was to nurture and
Yeah.
protect and keep her safe. That's what came to me, um, from what I had experienced. Also, that's all I knew,
It's kind of what, yeah,
and it
exactly. It's kind of
wasn't
what your
working.
natural thing is. Like, I'm just going to comfort the kid. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. And so what I realized very quickly was, it wasn't working because she continued to wake up, and it was the
Yeah.
same fear. There wasn't anything getting better. So I recruited my husband and asked him for his thoughts, because he
Yeah.
and I are very, very different. And so our parenting works out really well because we've learned to come together as parents
Yeah.
instead of using our differences against each other. We actually have found ways that the other one can come into a situation we're not doing very well at,
Yep.
and can give some insight and provide help that we wouldn't have come to on our own. So
That's
I went
great.
to him, asked him for help, and what I watched him do was change the power dynamic from, here I am as the adult who's above you, and I'm going to extend my bravery to you, and I'm going
Uh,
to extend my covering of protection to you, and then you should feel safe because you should trust that 100%. It's not a true thing that actually works in real life, but we
right.
want it to be what we can give to our kids.
Right.
And so when we can't, it's kind of painful. It's like,
Right.
I
It's
just wish I
hard.
could take this away.
Right.
Yes. And so the conversation that is in the book, and then what he had with her, essentially was, you can engage with your fear, you can step into it, you can talk to it, you can find within yourself what it is that you're actually afraid of, and you can speak it out, and you can call everything by name and draw it out from under the covers, and we can face it together. That's not something we're trying to hide from or run away from. And so the conversation the little boy has with his parents in the book is, um, we're not going to bring you into our bravery because we know that it's already inside of you.
Yeah.
But our job as parents is to cultivate that. And by doing the things that are hard, and by letting you experience the fear instead of pulling you out of it, you're going to actually begin to take steps into your own bravery.
Yeah.
And you're going to be able to face the things that feel like they're overwhelming, too big, and scary.
Yeah.
And so they just bring the conversation the dad has with the son is, let's talk to your dragon. Let's talk to what is there. And it's possible that you're missing something that is important. And there's a
Yeah.
perspective that you can reach and get to. Together, we can do that. And I'll be right here with you, but
Yeah.
you're going to be the one who talks to the dragon, not me.
Yeah. Which is amazing. Yeah. So the little boy wakes up, he's had a nightmare, dragons in his nightmare, all of that, and wants the comfort. And I love how in the story, the parents, it's exactly as you say, they meet him where he's at, right? But yeah, they don't just try to remove him from the situation. They say, hey, let's lean into this, which it was a really refreshing take, because I know for us, like with our parenting, um, like you said, if your kid's hurting, you want to remove them from that hurt. But oftentimes, wait a second, oftentimes there's gift in that too. Now, of course, you want to remove certain times of danger, right? Like, and I even love
Right.
how the little boy says, wait, you tell me to run away from strangers. It's like, yep, that's a different kind of danger, right? Like, I love how
Mhm.
you even get that in there, which is great. But the parents are saying, hey, let's lean into this. Let's actually ask your dragon some questions. And I
Mhm.
think I think that is such a powerful thing, because Mitch Matthews, and Dream Think Doers know this, I am a recovering worrier, right? And it's that whole thing. Worry has always been easy for me. It's a little bit in the gene pool of the Matthews family line, all of that, right? But it's wild, especially when it comes to prayer, when it comes to, being aware of those things, that oftentimes there's some truth, even though there might be some lies or some things that are imagined, there oftentimes can be some truth in those things we fear. And so it's
Mhm,
important to lean into that a little bit and say, all right, where is there any truth that I need to be, acknowledging, dealing with?
mhm.
I love that. So with the child then starts talking to the dragon. Walk us through that process. Walk us through that part of the story first, but then let's talk about the strategy and how you've applied it, how others have applied it as well. Because I think, again, it's 26 pages, beautifully illustrated, super simple, but this is a 300-page book if you wanted to like break down the strategy, right? So I love it.
Right.
So walk us through that part of the story and that strategy for you.
Yeah, so in the book, he looks at the dragon and actually acknowledges the face of the dragon and
Yeah.
sees if the fear that he is experiencing is actually reflected in the dragon's face, or if it maybe is different. So he sees that there is actually pain on the dragon's side and sadness, and the response is like, wait a second, I was afraid of you, but you don't actually look that scary. So what's happening here?
You
So
kind of
it's
look
like,
afraid of me. Yeah.
yeah, like there's something different than what I first saw.
Yeah.
And one of the things for our daughter, especially because she's 6, Xander's 3, so
Yeah.
he is a lot more less cautious than she is naturally. So it will be interesting as he gets older how
Right.
this dynamic will change. But for our eldest, Vivian, she is she was very aware of how I experienced fear, because I had a hard time letting her feel it for the first few years of her life,
Sure.
and she would look to me and acknowledge my face, and I would reflect the fear, and she would be like, I'm not even going near that, because if she's afraid and I'm supposed to be getting my brave from her and she doesn't
Right.
have any, I'm not
I'm
doing it.
out. Peace. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly right. If mom's
And
nervous, I'm gone. Yeah, exactly.
exactly. And so there was a learning curve for me of saying, I am actually instilling some of this inside of her,
Yeah.
where she's not taking the introspection for herself and saying, when I look at what I'm afraid of, am I actually afraid of it? Or am I picking up on what's going on around me that's telling
Mm,
me I should be afraid?
sure.
And so the strategy for me, as I think about the future for my kids, is if I am going to instill fear as a way to control and keep my kids safe,
Yeah.
the same thing is going to happen as they age and they go out into the world. Other people will also use fear to control, and it it's not what I want for them. It's
Yeah.
not, I don't want them to step into a situation where they are more comfortable accepting the fear and accepting the safety of not speaking up or not being involved in something they want to, or um, but they have to have tools to do that. They have to
Yeah.
say, I know that when I look at my fear and I actually am experiencing what it does to me, not what everyone else is telling me that it should,
Yep.
then I can actually make a decision for myself. So I believe that starts when they're super, super young,
Yep.
and being aware of how we introduce the fear. So, her in the book, I really like that part because the little boy is saying, I can't do this. I'm afraid to do this. But once he actually confronts it, and the imagination of a dream is
Right.
interesting because you can change the storyline if you
Right.
want. Like,
Right.
oh, yeah, no, this isn't actually what's happening. Like, this random person is in my dream because they're lost and they need help finding their way back home. Like,
Yep. Yep.
instead of following me creepily around a corner, like, you can
Right.
change the story. And so that's what we taught our daughter to do, and that's what the little boy is taught to do in the book. Is maybe he's not a fire breathing dragon because he wants to hurt you. Maybe it's because he had a bad day and
Right.
maybe he's hurting and he uh, needs something. And
Yeah.
so being able to create that imagination for yourself and move into a different conversation or a different power dynamic or a different perspective
Yeah.
um, really early, I think will be helpful for my kids as they get older to
I
be able to
agree.
pull on that instead of pull on the fear.
Yep. Absolutely. And kind of that willingness to lean into it a little bit, right? Like, especially in these situations where the fear and the danger is more imagined than real. Like, I mean, again, I love how you identify that we're not talking about running up to any stranger or running down dark alleys. That's not what we're talking
Yes.
about. But when we feel that sense of fear and realize, in fact, it may be imagined, whether it's a dream or anxiousness or whatever, and maybe it's worth leaning into. And you and I talked about before we hit record that I love this book. It brought an actual, huge grin to my face too, because when our younger son Alex was, I think he just turned 12, started to have a series of nightmares, pretty significant nightmares. And at first, all we wanted to just like, okay, we got to fix this. We got to, calm him, all of those things. And of course, we met him in it and loved him in it. But when they didn't go away, we were like, you know what? Wait, maybe we should lean into this. And we started to realize it was kind of a reoccurring story. It was a building story. It was a scary story, all of those things. And I was like, well, maybe you need to explore it. Like, what's happening in it? What do you need to see? And he took a lot of notes, and that different perspective, I think someone once said on the podcast, the opposite of bravery. Oh, wait, how do they say it? Well, basically, to be brave, it is so much easier if you are curious,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's that whole thing of being able to say, all right, maybe it's just being curious. And that's what he did, was he leaned into that dream and took those notes. And years later, he's written one, now almost, he's just about ready to publish his second book, zombie, post-apocalyptic thriller, based on that set of dreams, which is just incredible. So there can be a gift in those things when we lean into them and discover them. What's been the response? Like, how have parents talked with you about, how have their kids experimented with it? How have adults experimented with the strategy of leaning in and asking some questions?
So I don't have internet here on the farm. We
I
are
love
pretty
you. That is so awesome. I am so envious. I'm envious of the 23 acres, but I'm even more envious of no internet. That's beautiful.
yeah. Yeah, we have made some pretty drastic decisions. We don't have a TV. We've removed ourselves in a lot of ways from instant connection. So we actually have to
Sure.
sit with people a lot more to experience conversation, but we're a little bit outside of the city. Um, my book has only been out for a little
Yeah.
while, so I haven't actually in person connected with many people about their response. I
Yeah.
have heard online a couple of people have said like this is something that my kids automatically understood. Like
Yep.
they were they were interested in it because it was something they could repeat back to me what it is that the child was doing in the story.
Yeah.
So it was easily um, uh, tangible
Yep.
for children. But then I've also had a bunch of grandparents or adults who said, I bought one for my child or my grandchild, and then I read it, and then I thought, I'm keeping this, so I'm going to buy another one.
That's right.
and,
That's
and then
right.
I'm going to give it to them.
Well, what I love about, to me, my favorite books are the books that can create a common language, right? Like, and that's what I think you're doing with this, is that you're creating a common language that a family can lean into, whether their kids are 2 and 3 or 23 and 24. You know what I mean? Of being able to say, okay, sounds like there's some fear there. It sounds like there's some dragons there. What do we need to ask? What questions do we need to ask? Where do we need to lean into that? And I love that it's also not just buck up, little camper, you're going to be fine. It's actually equipping kiddos, parents, grandparents with some
Mhm.
tools to say, okay, let's lean into this together. And I want to see more of this in the world. I love it. What are your
Yeah.
hopes? What are your hopes for parents and kiddos when it comes to this book and what you're doing with it?
So I was actually talking to my daughter this morning because she said, "Oh, you're doing a podcast?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "Well, I'm talking about being brave." And so we were having a little conversation. I said, "Why do you think it's important for mommy and daddy to make you brave?" Like, we push her to do a lot
Yeah.
of things that others look at and they're like, "She's only 6." And we're like, she does it though, and she does
Yep.
amazing. Like, the farm chores she does, the helper she is on the farm, she absolutely loves it. And so she was like, "Well, if you teach me to be brave because you've learned to be brave, then that's really important." And I said, "Why is that important?" She said, "Because now when I have kids, I will know what it means to do something that's brave, so I can teach them. If I didn't know, I would probably hold them back and keep them more afraid. And then they'd be an adult who wouldn't know how to do anything. And they wouldn't get to do as much stuff as I do."
And
I
she's
was like,
6. Oh my God.
all right.
My job is done here. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. Drop the mic. That is fantastic. Great job, mom and dad. Right. Well, and that's, to me, it's one of those that what I love too is to hear that you are living this. Because this is, I think, going to be the 329th episode of Dream Think Do that you get to be on, which is wonderful. And it's always like there's a lot of authors out there that don't necessarily live true to what they
Mhm,
write, right? And
mhm.
we've tried to avoid interviewing those folks on Dream Think Do. I think most of the folks that we've interviewed, we truly, it's because they are living it. But I love that as an example of the fruit of living this, right? And
Yep.
that's what we want to see more of in the world as well. So, Lexi, this is awesome. What's the best way for people to find out more about you and about the book?
So I have a website that is lexiyoungpeck.com.
Awesome.
So Young, my maiden name, like my dad.
Right.
Um, and then I'm also on Instagram at the same Lexi Young Peck. Um,
Awesome.
and you can find me there too. But I just have thoughts. Like I said, I'm not on the internet a lot because I
Because
have
you
a
don't
lot of
have internet.
cows to chase. And yeah, I have my phone, but there's a lot going on here. And so, but when I think about something, the point that I want to get into parents is, um, I absolutely love raising my kids.
Yeah.
I love what it's done for my life. I love how much I've grown. I feel like I would not know myself as fully as I do without having little mirrors of me running around
Right.
and to experience. And we've put ourselves in a position where it's very difficult out here to continually to be patient and all these things that you hear, like you should do all these different ways of including your kids and engaging their emotional systems. And it's like sometimes you have a cow running out the field and a child is in the way, and you're like, "Get out of the way or you'll die." Like, things are very dramatic.
Yeah. Right.
And I feel like living like that is just as important as the time that's sat and focused and listening to the emotional state of your children just in like the everyday, but
Yeah.
also engaging them in something of the world that is pulling them and showing them that you are engaging fear just as they are engaging fear, and you have a responsibility that's pulling you and they get to be involved.
Yeah.
So those are the things I think about and that I bring into my Instagram, and then my website has just some extra things, I've blogs that I've written or whatever, but
I love it.
that's the
I
best
love
way.
it. Oh, and I think that is great. And it's true. I definitely do not say in any way, shape, or form that I've been a perfect dad by any means, but it is my favorite role on the planet. And I always say, one of the best ways that we can get our kids to dream bigger, think better, and do more is to do that ourselves, right? And
Mhm.
to invite them into your journey, not in a selfish way, but to invite them into your journey, which I do think, to your point, sometimes that involves messes. And sometimes that means cows that get out, right? Or like, our boys, they hear about the wins, but they also hear about the setbacks. And interestingly
Yeah.
enough, one of our sons just had a setback here recently, and he was able to equate it to a story that he had heard me tell about something that had happened within our business. And he's like, thanks for telling me that story, because he's like, that helped me feel better about this situation. He's like, I know I'm not dying. It's like, I'm not
Yeah.
dying on this hill. This is just, it's something I'm going to deal with. I'll overcome it and that kind of thing. And so I totally agree with you that it is, we need to live it and invite our kiddos into it. And also, of course, meet them where they're at, talk with them about their fears, but don't leave them there. Right.
Yeah.
So I
Yep.
love that. I love that. Lexi, keep up the great work. We're rooting for you. We'll be spreading the word. I think everybody needs to get a copy. I'm going to put that right up there. Everybody needs to get a copy of this beautiful, amazing book. And hey, maybe even read it to your kid. I know
Yeah.
I've read it a number of times myself going, yeah, I needed it. I needed that today. So thank you so much for what you're doing. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much.